Hi there, and welcome to this brief video from the Planetary Health Collective. My name is Mary Purdy. I am the Planetary Health Collective Education Lead. And we at Planetary Health Collective are a movement to mitigate the climate crisis and nourish human health by leveraging the unique role of food and nutrition professionals in the fight. So today I wanted to give a brief overview. Obviously, we are a movement to educate and incubate and activate. And so today I wanted to briefly discuss what it means to have a sustainable food system. And this definition really is evolving, and you may have your own ideas about it as well. But I wanted to share some perspectives that we at the Planetary Health Collective believe when we think about what sustainability means. So these are just a few definitions that you may or may not have seen. One is a sustainable and resilient food system conserves and renews natural resources, advances social justice and animal welfare, builds community wealth, and fulfills the food and nutrition needs of all eaters now and in the future. And that was a definition that came about in about 2008. We've also seen a definition by the Food and Agriculture Organization, which talks about sustainable diets as being protective and respectful of biodiversity and ecosystems, culturally acceptable, accessible, economically fair and affordable, nutritionally adequate, safe and healthy, while optimizing natural and human resources. So these are just two definitions for you. But I think it can be interesting to continue this conversation because the word sustain or sustainable may not necessarily reflect the direction that we are hoping to go in. Do we ultimately want to sustain what we have? Do we want to more think of this as how do we create a food system that is regenerative, or an agricultural system that is regenerative, that is helping to not only conserve, but also regenerate and create new life? Additionally, we may be at the point where we may need to think about being adaptive. So how will our food system, how can our agricultural system adapt to the climate crisis that is in fact already here? So I want to go even further on this idea of what a sustainable food system looks like to make sure that we are incorporating many, many different dimensions. So take a look at this next page or next slide with me, and let's go through this together. So when we think about a sustainable diet or sustainable food systems, we have to look at this from a very holistic perspective. So over here on the left, you can see that a sustainable food system needs to make sure that it is supporting and considering and including nutritional and human health. This means access to diverse foods that are nutrient dense, that are safe from contaminants and chemicals. It also is about reducing malnutrition, which we know is a huge issue globally. It is also about making sure that our water and our air is not contaminated. And we need to think about the potential implications that antibiotic resistance has on human health. Moving over here to the right, we also need to consider and support and include environmental health, planetary health. This means producing food with fewer agrochemicals, fertilizer, pesticides. This also means that we are supporting biodiversity so that we are not contributing to more biodiversity loss, which is a huge prevalence in our food system right now, and a big issue in terms of both human health and environmental health and the ability of our species to survive. We also want a food system that supports the health of the soil, which grows our food. That goes back to over here, this human health component, nutritional health component, to create healthy, nutrient-dense food. We want to make sure that our food system supports and does not degrade the ocean, that it makes sure that it doesn't produce lots of greenhouse gases, which it currently does, and that we are wasting less food, which is also contributing to greenhouse gases. But it goes beyond just the nutrition piece and the environmental piece. We also have to consider what are the economic benefits. Is our food system profitable to everybody in the supply chain? And that includes food workers and farmers and farm workers and anybody else who helps to bring the food from the ground to our tables. We need to make sure that people are paid a fair wage and that they are treated with respect as it relates to finances, and that food is also affordable. So think about this. We often hear people say that organic food is too expensive. What if we reframed that and we thought, what if everyone were paid a fair enough wage so that organic food was not too expensive? It just was affordable in the context of what people were being paid. And if we think about the actual true cost of food, and there was a fantastic paper put out by the Rockefeller Foundation, which found that we spend about $1.3 trillion on our food system or on food in general as a global community. But if we think about the true cost, and that is the cost of environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, as well as human health costs related to the food that we are producing and consuming, then that cost, that true cost, is closer to $3.3 trillion. So when we think about sustainability, we also have to think about the economics behind that. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we are supporting, considering, and including those socio-cultural components of what makes a food system sustainable. That means that the food needs to be inclusive, culturally appropriate. Who are we recommending foods to and why? And are we making sure that they are culturally relevant to that group or demographic? We also need to make sure that our food system honors Indigenous people, that they honor making sure that Indigenous communities have access to this food and that their foodways are also being respected. We need to make sure in a sustainable food system that we look to food sovereignty, which is the way in which communities are able to have agency and governance over their own ability to grow food and the food that is most appropriate for them. This is also about animal welfare. How are we treating the animals who are feeding us? Are we treating them with humane practices? What about how we treat our farm workers? We need to make sure that a sustainable food system incorporates the welfare of farm workers. And then, of course, equity on all fronts, gender, race, and the effects historically that our food and agricultural system has had on marginalized communities and how that continues today. So we have a large task ahead of us, but we cannot achieve that task unless we are including all of these pillars: nutrition, environment, economics, and socio-cultural components. So thank you so much. I continue to broaden this definition, and I hope you will join me in continuing to develop and evolve what it means to create a more sustainable food system. Join us at the Planetary Health Collective as we make sure that we are doing everything we can as nutrition professionals to leverage our skill sets and knowledge and experience to mitigate this climate crisis. Thank you so much.